All right, what's going on, guys? So in this video, I want to answer the question I've been getting asked the most every time I actually go to the gym, which is how is full body training actually going for me? So I've talked about the science and the theory behind a high frequency full body setup in another video, which I'll link down below, but I haven't actually shared much of my own personal experience with it over the last 6 or 7 months. So in this video, I'm going to lay out all the pros and all the cons that I've noticed with this split so you guys can have a full summary of my thoughts so far. And I'm going to overlay some clips here from last night's workout. I ended up hitting 455 pounds on the deadlift for 2 reps, and it moved super fast, so I'm really excited about that. So I actually want to start with the cons here, so the potential downsides of doing a full body split that you'll want to keep in mind if you're thinking about trying it out. First, just to make sure we're all on the same page, anytime I speak about any training split here on the channel, just try to keep in mind that for the most part, I see training splits simply as a way of organizing your workload in a way that fits your schedule and keeps driving progress forward. For the record, I've been training for 14 years now, and I've tried push-pull leg splits, upper-lower splits, and full body splits, and I think they each have their own unique advantages and disadvantages depending on the person and the context. But I'd also say all of them can be very effective, and I wouldn't be comfortable putting either of them on a pedestal and saying this one is definitely the best. And maybe I'll do another video explaining the pros and cons of each of these splits, but for now I'm going to focus on high frequency full body since that's what I'm doing at the moment. So I think the first potential downside of high frequency full body is that there are more ways to mess it up than other splits. So take the bro split, for example. It's super easy to set it up and it's pretty hard to mess it up. You take all your chest exercises, put them all on Monday, and then you've got a full week before you hit chest again. And because there's actually far more time for recovery than anyone realistically needs, it's pretty easy to manage recovery on a bro split. So if you don't have much knowledge of program design, a body part split is as simple as it gets. Even a push-pull leg split, just taking the legs for example, you still have about 3 days of recovery before you have to hit legs again. So the chances are if you happen to overdo it on that first leg day, you'll probably be pretty much good to go by the time the second leg day rolls around. Now we can contrast this with high frequency full body, where if you don't know any better, you might come in and do so much leg work on day 1 that you end up feeling already fatigued on day 2, but now you got to do legs again, and then by day 3 or 4, you're feeling even more fatigued, so you just end up digging yourself into a hole with overtraining. So clearly with a high frequency approach, fatigue management is a bit more complex. So if you don't have a fundamental understanding of it, you could definitely overdo things a bit more easily on a split like this than most others. So for this reason, I don't actually think it's a great split for beginners. If you're new to the gym and you want to train full body, there's no reason to go 5 days a week or even 4 days a week. All you need as a beginner is 2 or 3 full body workouts per week, which won't give you the same potential recovery issues that a higher frequency split might. Now, when it comes to me, when I first started this split last summer, I was initially doing way too much each day, and I was just feeling more and more fatigued as the week went on. Because I was coming from a history of split routines, it just didn't feel right to do, say, 3 sets of leg curls, and that would be your only leg work for the day, or do 3 sets of lat pull downs and not also include a row for the back. But I just needed to get over that bias and start taking my weekly volume that I'd normally need to make progress on and just splitting that up across 5 training days. Once I did that, my recovery improved, and now I feel like my recovery is better than it's ever been, and I'll get to that in a minute. Okay, another potential downside is that the workouts can be longer, at least they are for me. Now this doesn't seem to be the case with everyone. Some people say they can still get in and out in an hour and don't really notice a difference, but for me it's usually more like an hour and a half. And I think that's because, say you're hitting deadlifts and then you've got bench press right after, you'll need to do a pyramid warm-up for the deadlifts and then another pyramid warm-up for the bench press, and that can definitely add up, especially if your working weight is pretty heavy. So for me, even though my full body workouts are a bit longer, I don't personally look at it as a downside because for one, I love training, and for two, I don't mind being in the gym a bit longer if I think it's going to get me better results. But for someone who's just looking for the quickest, most time-efficient way to train, I'd say this probably isn't the best routine. It does depend on how much volume you're actually doing, but maybe something like a upper-lower split done 4 days a week would give you most of the results for less total time in the gym. All right, the next downside that I noticed early on was that I was always having to train a muscle group while it was still sore, which was pretty annoying, at least for a while. Now, I think this might have been especially bad for me because most people I've spoken to haven't actually found this lingering soreness problem to be an issue for the most part. But for whatever reason, ever since I started training, I've always just had the worst delayed onset muscle soreness. I remember back when I was running bro splits, I'd do a leg workout on Sunday, and then the next Sunday, I'd still be sore sometimes. So I could be a bit of a genetic exception just because I tend to get super sore anyway, but I did find that for the first few weeks, I'd do a full body workout on Monday, and then some of my muscles, like my quads for example, would still feel sore on Tuesday, but now I'd have to hit them again. So this actually started out as a pretty bad thing, and it almost caused me to scrap it altogether, but now I'm really glad I didn't because I never get sore anymore, even if I push it really hard, and my recovery is the best it's ever been. I'll get to that more in a minute. But I do still put this in the cons column just because for some people more like myself, there might be this adjustment period where you have to train the same muscle again while still sore, which isn't inherently problematic as long as you can still perform the exercise safely through a full range of motion and you do plenty of warm-up. But like I said, after the first few weeks, the repeated bout effect is going to kick in anyway, and that soreness should just totally go away, which has been great for me. Okay, and the last downside I'll briefly mention here, just because people keep asking me about it, is joint stress. Now, I haven't noticed any joint pain myself after running this split for 6 months, and I know colleagues and friends of mine who've been doing it for years without any big issues. So I'm not actually convinced on this one being a true downside, but I did want to bring it up here just to share my thoughts. Now, I think the line of reasoning is that if you're training the same muscles every day, you're also stressing the same joints every day, which over time can lead to overuse and cumulative stress. But I think you could just as easily spin it the other way. You could say, well, lumping all your leg work on one day, so you've got squats, lunges, leg press, leg extensions, all in a single workout, is going to load that joint so much all at once and create so much acute joint stress. So I think the key is just using good technique and not pushing yourself past your limits, and that's pretty much the same advice I'd give regardless of the split. But I will say this, if you have a history of joint problems, especially with a specific joint, you'll want to be especially careful with how you sequence the exercises that use that joint. So for example, if you have a history of shoulder pain, you might want to space out your bench press work and your shoulder press work by at least 2 or 3 days rather than putting 2 heavy overloading compound exercises on back-to-back days. And then you can just fill in the rest of the volume with lower impact exercises like lateral raises and make sure you do plenty of rear delt work as well. So I can see how the joint concern would be valid if you were doing the exact same exercises day after day, especially at the same intensity. But if you're varying the movement and loading patterns from day to day, the way the joints are being taxed will also vary. And I would imagine that should help prevent joint overuse. Now, with that said, in my powerlifting days, I ran programs where I'd squat every single day for a month, and that added a ton of strength to my squat and a ton of size to my quads. And because I managed my intensity and volume appropriately, I didn't run into any joint issues either. So with any split, you want to pay attention to your body's feedback, and if you have any warning signs, adjust the setup and make sure you're recovering. All right, so those are the cons. Now, not all of them are fully legitimate in my experience, but I wanted to share my thoughts on all of them anyway. Now I want to turn to the good things I noticed since running a high frequency split, and there's actually more pros than cons for me, so I'm going to go through these a little bit more quickly. So the first thing I really love about it is that it's new and different, which I'm finding really motivating. I think novelty is important from a physiological perspective in the sense that a new training stimulus should cause the body to adapt in a new way. Meaning if you just keep doing the same things that you've always done, you'll plateau at some point and need to change things up. But even more than that, I'm saying this from a psychological perspective. It's just exciting to be doing something that I haven't really done before. And I think that novelty is huge for making continued progress as a more advanced trainee. The second pro for me is that the individual workouts feel much less overwhelming. For example, on a leg day, if I had to do squats, RDLs, lunges, calves, and so on, it can feel overwhelming going into the workout. And a lot of the time I just wouldn't look forward to lifting. But with full body training, it feels much more manageable to hit one exercise for a body part, and that's it. And if you look at it across the full week, you're not actually doing any less. You might actually be doing more. It just feels a lot easier in your head. All right, pro 3 is somewhat related. It's never having to do a full leg day. Any way you slice it, doing one exercise for legs every day feels a lot easier than lumping it all on one day. And I haven't personally missed having a designated leg day. So for me, this has been a plus, although I could see that for some non-bros who loved leg day, they might see this as a downside. The fourth pro is that I'm actually making great progress, especially when it comes to strength, which I do find interesting because my split is definitely more hypertrophy focused than strength focused. So this could be a muscle memory effect going on since I was detrained a bit due to injury, or it could be the introduction of top sets into my program, or it could be that I'm just responding really well to the higher frequency, which to me seems the most likely, given that I remember from years back, whenever I do a high frequency squat or bench program, my lifts would blow up. And as for my physique, I'll put a little post-workout posing up here on the screen. I weighed in at 162 pounds this morning, so my weight actually hasn't changed all that much, but I'm thinking I'm looking the best I have in a while, so I'm excited to see how things continue to progress after I fine-tune the program a bit more and continue to make some more strength progress. Fifth pro, I kind of already mentioned this, is that I never get sore anymore, which is allowing me to perform better, and my recovery feels great. Next pro is that moving around missed volume is super simple. So occasionally I'll have to cut the workout short for whatever reason. Rather than needing to wait until the next push day or the next week or whatever, I can just easily throw it on tomorrow's workout or any other workout because I'm hitting every muscle every day anyway, so it doesn't mess anything up recovery-wise. Pro 7 is that I do find my execution per set is better, especially toward the end of workouts. So historically, by the time I got to the end of a push day and had lateral raises to do, I'd usually feel so tired from all the other shoulder and chest stuff that I couldn't focus as much as I can when I literally only have to do 3 sets of lateral raises that day. When you only have 1 exercise per body part, it's so much easier to give it your full focus and attention. The next pro, this has actually been a pleasant surprise for me, but full body pumps are actually great. You'd be surprised how little volume you need to get a decent arm pump or a chest pump if you're focusing on the movements and keeping your core body temperature up throughout the workout. And I think I like having a solid full body pump at least as much as being almost painfully pumped in just one muscle. So that's been my experience with full body training so far. I'd say it's definitely been more positive than negative for me, especially at this point in my training career. And I'm personally enjoying it more than push-pull legs or upper-lower splits at the moment, even though those are still solid routines that I'm sure I'll circle back to eventually. And I think I'm gonna leave it there for this one. Don't forget to leave me a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you haven't already. I'll put a link over here to my latest Science Explained video covering full body. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all here in the next one.